Councilmember Patterson. Here. Councilmember Smith. Here. Vice President Lupien.
Here.
President Melendez.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to note that we're joined by our council colleagues, Councilmember Harris somewhere, Councilmember Lightfoot, I believe, is with us by Zoom. Councilmember Martin is here, Councilmember Pio as well. So, we are joined today, right now, with DES. Later today, we'll do Rec and Human Services, the library, and then we'll conclude with City Council and Clerk Office and the PAB later today. We'll stick to our schedule tab by tab, but I know that Commissioner Perrin could not be with us today. I hope everything is well and okay with him. Want to open it up to you, Mayor, to the Deputy Commissioner Capute. If anyone has any comments or introductions for the team, you're more than welcome.
No, just let me say, Commissioner Perrin, he's under the weather. As you know, he loves this stuff and he takes it seriously, so he's sorry that he could not be here today, but I'm joined by our very abled Assistant Commissioner Capute Okansi, who is very prepared along with the rest of the DES team to answer any questions that you might have. As everyone knows, this is our biggest department. I always tell folks that if DES was a separate entity in and of itself, in terms of companies in the city of Rochester, it would be in the top 10 in terms of size. You know, this organization does some of everything to keep our city moving. So we are grateful for Commissioner Perrin and his leadership, and we look forward to answering any questions that you may have as it relates to this budget area.
Great. And just for point of clarity for council, even though technically we were going to go until 2 p.m. today, I think we'll be able to make up time at some other places, so we will take DES for as long as it goes because there is so much essential work in here. We're going to go tab by tab. There's a lot of stuff in here. So just pointing everyone to our day one schedule, we're going to start with Commissioner's Office 7:9 to 7:15, move over to A&E 7:16 to 7:21, and then Operations, and we'll move forward from there. So right now, 7:9 through 7:15, I want to open it up to any council member who may have a question. You all are lucky, DES team, because before we ate lunch, everyone was real animated with lots of questions. We might be a little bit too much enjoying lunch right here. Councilmember Patterson?
No, I was just going to say that's how it always works. Obviously, they won the lottery this year.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you speak to initiatives around greening the fleet of cars owned by DES?
Yes, thank you, Councilman Lupien. I will refer to, again, if I take a moment, opportunity to introduce
of course,
the DES
please.
staff.
We're
doing this as a tandem today, so I'll introduce the staff real quick. To my right is Holly Bear, our city engineer. Behind me, right here, is Brian Liberty, our manager of buildings and parks. Right next to Brian is Karen St. Albin, which is the director of operations. Of course, you know our budget staff already. And then right in the middle is Jeff Google, our director of water. In the back, if you guys will raise your hand, you can hear me. We have our director, our superintendent of security is Vince McIntyre. Next to him is our director of environmental quality, is Ann Spalding. Next to her is Scott Korzer, our director of our fleet and services. And then in the back, next to him is our Director of Telecommunications, Louis Tobias. In the back is our Director of Personnel, Angelica Stringer. So, thank you very much.
And I'll also point out, he joined us from the convention center, although he didn't bring any cookies. Jim Brown from the convention center, and I'm not sure if anyone is here from Blue Cross, but
yes,
Blue Cross.
Yes, Rob Newman.
Rob Newman from
Yes.
from the Blue Cross. Did you bring any cookies? See. There we go.
Perfect.
So thank you very much. So just to be clear out with the rest of the council, we are opening up on 7:9 to 7:15, which is basically the Commissioner's Office, environmental quality and security. Councilmember Rubin asked a question about our fleet as it pertains to environmental quality. So without further ado, go forward. How are we going to
Greening of the fleet.
Correct. So the commissioner did have some prepared statements on exactly on greening our fleet services. So right now in The purpose, I'll specifically read out what he stated. So currently we have 2 charging stations over at South Ave Garage, and then with those charging stations, it's allotted for 4 vehicles. Additional opportunities will be identified to offset the costs to the city for installing those electric charging stations. We are working to develop a comprehensive charging plan, which will include both owning and operating charging stations, as well as encouraging required EVS at new development sites. Additionally, the NYPA Evolve program is evaluating sites where municipalities like Rochester to install and own operated charging stations throughout the city. Specifically, our plan will be to include a plan for existing and planned assets inventoried and appropriate purchase replacement schedules to ensure that the life cycle of each existing asset. Applicable and available alternative fuel stations and equipment related to agree upon needs to be looked at by the organization as a whole. We also would like to do a cost-benefit analysis to determine which preferred vehicles we want to have in our fleet, as well as a parts maintenance plan and staff and skills required to do such work. Overall, we are asking for funding through the CFA process for additional fleet for electric green vehicles. Excuse me.
Thank you. And would you mind forwarding the commissioner's comments on to us?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. Before I take additional questions, Councilmember Smith, one thing I wanted to mention in the intro to DES is just a thank you to the whole team for the incredibly clear sheet on the KPIs that OMB provided us. I have to say, this isn't just because I'm an alumni of the DES committee, but there was certainly no more detailed outcome sheet of what you all have worked on in the last year and what you're going to work on this year, which I think is really helpful as we prepare our questions. And certainly, Commissioner Perrin preempted the question that Councilmember Lupien asked right there, and it's good to know that the administration is going to work on this, and hopefully we can all advocate for some of that CFA funding. So thank you for that. Again, 7-9 to 7:15, Councilmember Smith, you're up.
I'm sorry, I was really looking at 7-2. I thought you said all of 7.
Okay, we can come back, but 7.2 is just part of the summary page, so it probably feeds up into one of the other sections. But right now, DEQ and security are where we're focused. I have a few questions, but I want to open it up to any other council members. Councilmember Pio?
Thank you. On page 7-12 for the renewable energy generated at city properties, we have an actual in 2020 of 2.75 million. An estimated jumped up, but then it jumps back down to 2.6 million. What is it jump down for?
I refer to my colleague Ann Spalding on that.
Thank you, Councilmember Pio, for the question. So some of it depends on actually how sunny out it is. So we do estimate the amount of renewable energy that the sites are able to generate, and then we measure it when the fiscal year is over. So, and there also is a slight reduction in the amount of photovoltaic electricity that the panels generate each year due to the degrading of the panels. So we're basically estimating based on anticipated weather and the actual efficacy of the panels themselves.
So is that only solar? Do we not have any other renewable energy that we can source?
That is correct.
Any idea of changing that in the future to?
Certainly, yes. We are always evaluating opportunities to add additional renewable energy at our facilities. For example, geothermal, we're actively taking a look at.
Thank you.
Can you give a general update, Ann, on community choice aggregation and how the Rochester Community Solar is working for us as a city and also for what you all are hearing from constituents and residents?
Sure, thank you, yes. So the program has been successful. We have about, I believe, the last time we measured, we had about 62% of eligible homes and small businesses participating, and that has been rising. With the increase in the rate of electricity that people are seeing, with our fixed price of renewable energy, 100% renewable energy, is actually more economical than the variable rate that RG&E has. So we're also doing additional outreach and education through our CCA administrator to the public to make sure that they understand that it's an option. They can opt into the program even if they didn't participate when it was first opened up. People can opt in at any time. So we continue to do that education and outreach, and we're really looking forward to expanding to more eligible households moving forward.
One investment I hope to see us make with CCA, with Rochester Community Power, excuse me, is just around communications. Generally speaking, I think the unfortunate timing is that we implemented this as energy prices were going up across the board. So there are probably a lot of people who look at their bill and are blaming this program when the reality is they've actually saved money with this program compared to what it would have been otherwise. But I'm not sure how people would know that unless this is something they were studying very closely. So is there a strategy to do kind of like a, hey, it's been a year, look at what you've saved, look at what we've done together, that DES or the mayor's office is going to put out?
Yes, absolutely. We're working with our administrative partner, Rocktricity, to develop that data to educate the community as to what they saved as participants of the Community Choice Aggregation Program. And you're absolutely correct that our participants have saved money, and it's really important to get that information out there to them.
When do you expect to be able to have something out to people?
I will get back with our administrator and get an answer to you, but it shouldn't take too long for them to do that analysis.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions on DEQ, Councilmember Smith?
Yes, 711, the first objective. I know it says that you are developing a heat emergency plan, but I wanted to know what your thoughts are and who you are defining as the target population.
Annie?
Yes, thank you. So you're correct, we are in the process of developing that heat emergency plan. We are reaching out to basically 2 stakeholder groups. We worked with the actual operations folks from the county, the city, and other various agencies like the Red Cross to see what's happening now with heat emergencies and evaluate what can be done to improve that. And then we'll also be working with a group of stakeholders of various populations throughout the city, and that will include people most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. So that would be the elderly, the disabled, people who don't have resources, people who have substandard housing or lack of air conditioning, for example. So we're trying to get a broad cross-section of the community to make sure that we get input from all of those groups to develop the plan.
And just one follow-up question. Will the plan that you are in the process of developing, you mentioned that you're working with stakeholders, will it align with, like, I don't know if it's code red or code blue that happens in the city under extreme heat conditions? And are you working with the homeless shelters?
A lot of the code red, code blue, all those things are coordinated through Dr. Shirley Green's group. That's the area where we coordinate the extreme heat emergencies along with our other partners that are involved in that. But yes, that's the area, that's the department that work comes out of. So for example, in the storm that happened a couple of months ago when power was knocked out, we used, for example, the Gantt Center as a place for heat. And we'll plan on the same things this summer if we reach that point where we have extreme heat. We'll coordinate again with our centers as well as the libraries as cooling centers.
Thank you.
Thanks. One additional question for me on DEQ is similar to what you provided and related to Rochester Community Power. I'd like a little bit more on the composting program. The terminology in the budget on 711 is evaluate results of the pilot drop-off. Frankly, you've heard me say this before, DES team generally, you can evaluate it all you want. We know it's been a success. There's a waiting list. People want to be on it. I go and drop off compost at Genesee Valley Park on either Wednesdays or Saturdays, and people are waiting, and they're eager to be able to have more drop-off spots. So can I get a little more insight as to what are the investments going to be this year? How do we make sure people on the waiting list can participate in the program?
So I'll have Ann start, and then Karen can actually expand.
Sure, thank you very much. So as far as evaluating the results of the program, on the DEQ side, what we want to do is measure the actual amount of food waste that was collected, and we can get that information in an aggregate amount. We can also get it all the way down to the participant amount. So we want to take a look at that and see where it is geographically as well. But what we also want to do is see what the greenhouse gas emissions reduction value of that diverted food waste is as well. So we'll be developing a report on that. And I'll let Karen St. Alban should be able to answer the operational questions.
Thank you. So operationally, we certainly are going to expand. The end of July is the end of our pilot program. So we have plans to expand with both participants and some other entities to see how we do with contamination. It's contamination is very low now because we man these stations. So we plan to just continue and get as much information as we can. We are finding that there's a great deal of people that want to join in, and we're going to push to get that done in the next year in small bites. So we make sure that however we expand this, which it will be expanded, we do this very thoughtful with data.
Thank you. If there's any other questions, 79715, President Melendez, go ahead.
Yeah, not a question, just a quick statement. On 712, I noticed that the rejob program is doubling in size, and I just want to thank the Office of the Commissioner for expanding that program and creating more opportunity for our folks to get in the industry. So thank you.
One final question for me. This is for you, Mayor Evans, specifically. This is another place where I think, in terms of organizational structure, this is kind of a strange reality that security funnels up to environmental services. I'm sure there's a ton of reasons why that's been the case over the years. Is this what you imagine to be the kind of long-term home for security? Yeah, it has. And, it's always fun. I wish a lot of people were on the fly on the wall when we did our what we call Ready Team and Transition Office. We thought about moving, one of the proposals was we thought about moving security under the mayor's office. But it just makes sense under DES, particularly because they oversee so many of our facilities, so they can coordinate with them. The other place where there are tons of city facilities are the Department of Recreation and Human Services as well. But because DES oversees so many of the facilities that we have, it just makes sense for them to be able to not have another layer. They can do it within there, and then have security deployed to all of our many locations that we have in the city. I mean, it's amazing the number of city facilities that are in Monroe County. You forget, as mayor, I was just reminded by the sheer number of places that we have, and I think it's pretty cool. We got somebody over here washing the windows right there. That kind of, I didn't know if that was part of the program, the trick, to see if I was paying attention. But yeah, so right now, yes, we think it will stay under DES for now for that reason. Thank you. And if people want to come back to 7:09 through 7:15, we're doing fine on time, so that's fine. But we'll at least open it up right now to architecture and engineering, 7:16 to 7:21.
I have one.
Councilmember Pio, go ahead.
So, I'm sorry. I don't see it outlined in this, but I wanted to make sure that we had a clear understanding that are we pushing forward with make sure that our architecture and engineering does focus on raised or elevated bike lanes, or something that's going to keep bike lanes separated from the streets? I didn't see it outlined in here. I just want to make sure that we touched on that.
That's a great question, Councilman Pio. Yes, As a part of our complete streets policy now, I will say that every single street that we touch, we are evaluating those streets for all multimodal needs, including bicycle infrastructure. As you may know, a lot of our inventory is aged in that it was designed for a different time. So we often have geometric constraints. So the buildings are very close together. So when we're looking at all the needs of vehicular needs, parking needs, bicycle lane needs, sidewalk needs, pedestrian needs, it can be very challenging simply from geometry. Where we do have more space to work and we're doing large reconstructions, we are looking very closely at that. So East Main Street is a great example where we're doing separate bike lanes. We will evaluate the feasibility of that from a physical standpoint and also from a financial standpoint. As you can imagine, it adds a little cost, so we would look at the feasibility and find funding.
Thank you very much.
Councilmember Lightfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the President, Vice President, colleagues, Mayor, and your staff. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm not sure, I hope this is, I know it's in this category, but could just push me to, a later time if this has already been asked or if I'm in the wrong section. And I want to thank the staff for putting together a great analysis of the budget. And I think because they spent so much time, I like to always look at and ask their questions. The City of Rochester owns and operates, excuse me, many properties and buildings. Where does the number stand today? Have we done an analysis on what is costing city taxpayers to maintain these properties? And are there any plans in the coming years to reduce the number of properties the city owns beyond next year as well?
Yes, thank you. I don't think anyone will disagree. We have a lot of buildings in our inventory. We provide a lot of services here at the city. As of this year, we have over 190 facilities, 900 acres of parkland and associated facilities, 14 art centers, convention center, the arena, 2 cemeteries, indoor and outdoor skate rink, and various vacant lots. Now, as a general rule, through our capital investment program, we do continually assess the repair and maintenance needs for all of the facilities, and that you will see reflected in our requests for through our capital investment program. We also, each year, as a part of that review, keep an eye on where we can make adjustments and divest of inventory. And I'll note that that's not only our buildings and parcels, but even within our city right-of-way. If there's things that make sense to divest as a part of a larger development, that's also something we review.
And the one thing I'll add, Councilmember Lightfoot, that's costing us a lot of money, and it was mentioned earlier, parking garages. I don't have all the answers for that yet.
That was my next question.
We do got an RFP out for it, but those things are expensive to maintain. So that's something that we're, there's an internal team that the Deputy Mayor is leading in terms of working, thinking about how we handle the parking garage situation going forward. And we are moving towards putting out an RFP to see if we get back some good proposals in terms of possibly offloading those garages.
I was just going to ask, Mr. Mayor, previous administration, it seemed to be the mindset that kind of wanted to get out of the parking business. Is that your sentiment as well, that we're looking to move out of the parking business?
Yeah, I would like to move out of the parking garage business. The only caveat is that if we move out, I want to make sure that it's done so to make sure that our people don't lose out on something. So I don't want somebody coming in, taking over the parking garage, and then they're not providing the high quality that we do. So that's the challenge that we have to make sure of. But in terms of the ongoing maintenance of these garages, they are a pain in the butt, and we want to try to find a way to divest those if possible.
I have a follow-up to that.
Sure.
So, understanding that they're expensive, if a company took those over, they would be looking to make a profit. And so where would it come from? Would it come from skimping on maintenance, lower paying the workers, or charging the more prices?
That's the $100 million question we have to make sure, which is why if we do an RFP, we have to make sure that any contract that we have has I don't want to say an advocacy component, but a piece that will make sure that some of those things aren't lost going forward.
Right.
That's why this has been so complex. This is why we haven't gotten rid of them yet, right? Because we don't want, you have people say, oh, I want to buy your parking garages. Then you look at their books And it's like, you can barely run your own life, and you're trying to come run the city's parking garages. That's not going to happen. So it is a challenge for us to do that. And that's why we've been moving with deliberate speed. But long term, from a financial perspective for the city, it's not in our best interest to stay in the parking garage business. But we need a strong, solid company that can prove that they can be able to do that without skimping on the three things that you just
Right, thank you.
I have a follow-up for that. As you know, there's nothing new in the sun.
Right.
And I'd like to know if you've ever gleaned from other cities to see how they resolve or if they can resolve their parking garage issues that we have.
Yeah, I think a lot of what a lot of cities have done is they've made sure that they've turned them over to strong operators, right? And I think that's been the successful piece. Operators that still are able to maintain good relationships with the city. Where I think some of these things can go south is if you sell it to an operator, they then, to use a slang term, get brand new, and then they're then at odds with the city, and then we end up going back and forth and saying, you know what, now we're going to try to get the parking garage back because now you have a dilapidated structure that you're charging a high price for, and it's not providing the service to our residents in their parking in that place. So we don't want a situation where we have parking garages that create a liability where people can get hurt or killed, which we know can happen. So the South Ave garage, for example, many of you may remember back in 2005 when it started collapsing. Well, it was a city garage, so of course we invested in that garage. We did that, but we want to make sure that anyone else that takes on those garages will invest in the same way that we will, and that's why it's costing us so much money. Because from a liability standpoint, but also just from a reputational standpoint, we want to make sure that the city is tending to these garages with care, and anyone that does that, that takes those on, will have to be able to do the same thing. And that's why we still have most of the garages because of that situation.
I'd like to ask a question about telecommunications and what was it? Was it 3 years ago at this point that we passed a pretty substantial telecommunications bill? And I understand that there was some tension, maybe some lawsuits that we don't need to get into the weeds on each and every one of those. But I would love an update. It seems like there's, according to 719, we're putting in $141,000 for 2 permit compliance positions, which I assume are kind of part of that whole process. So I'd love just an update on where we are with Dig Once and the telecommunications work we're doing generally.
Yes, I'm going to have our Director of Telecommunications, Louis Tobias, answer that. But we can get you more substantive written response on that. I think we'll work in partnership with law to get you a response to exactly how many agreements we have currently that we for the city. But go ahead, Louis.
Thank you, Councilman, for that question. As you know, you mentioned the legal issues that are surrounding that extensive legislation that was passed here, and to a certain extent, the landscape is stable but changing. What's going on in Washington has changed a little bit, and we have our Corporation Counsel here, Mr. Beef, that can speak specifically to where we are as it relates to those cases. But we have been moving forward as if we believe that our legislation is sound and constitutional, and so we have moved forward. We've entered into many master license agreements since then with some of the very entities that were party to the lawsuit. So we believe that we're moving forward. We've come to some agreements as it relates to how they will behave and what those interactions will be between us and the city. But also, we think that we're pretty much a model. We consistently get calls from other municipalities within the state, across the country, asking us how we got to where we got to. So some of those issues will play out in the courts, but we think that we're on pretty sound footing.
What do these 2 new positions allow us to do?
Well, one of the things that is very important is understanding our inventory, managing our inventory, and dealing with the day-to-day interactions. We have hundreds of miles of right-of-way that are under our purview. And we've come across certain situations where there have been some not so positive actors out there. And we need to be able to make sure that folks are abiding by that, but also be able to provide the kind of administrative support to know that we've properly mapped out hundreds of years of things that are actually in the right-of-way, what's there, who owns it, who maintains it. In the 90s, we were dealing with a wild, wild west scenario where we had 3, 4, 5 dozen telecom companies in the right-of-way. Many have now been taken over by other companies and are no longer in existence. So when our good friends over at the water department have to do work, and they go in there, and sometimes they find things that have not necessarily been properly mapped, and we have to find people and say, hey, we need you to come and take care of your things within the right-of-way. And also moving forward, making sure that we are, Rochester was named one of the 21 smartest cities in the world, not in the country, but in the world, is because we've been forward-looking with our A&E department as we move forward. When we go into the right-of-way and reconstruct roadways and things of that sort, we think about deployment in the future. So everything from GIS to permitting to all of those things that surround the telecommunications and maintenance, as Commissioner says, guardians of the right-of-way.
So these two positions would specifically be in our permits division, and Holly can speak a little bit about what they're.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. So in a nutshell, we in the right-of-way permits department receive approximately 1,350 permits applications each year that are issued annually, and a big part of that is the oversight of those permits, making sure that the construction is done correctly, making sure we're doing 2-year inventory inspections, even for small initiatives, I shouldn't say small, the sidewalk cafes, so making sure that they're being set up safely and correctly per the permit applications. This requires folks to be out on our 1,000 lane miles of street reviewing those, and also here in the office being able to receive and answer questions on those applications. So right now our staff is very small, and we're very fortunate to have these positions so we can provide a higher level of service.
And just let me say this, because I'm so glad you asked this question, Councilmember Gruber, and all council members can help us with this. There are people in this community that think they can get away with doing stuff to the city that they would never do anywhere else, right? So they want to sue us. They get upset because we're telling them we spend all this money, council appropriates all this money for roads to be done. We spend all this money, those roads are supposed to be good for 100 years, and then a company thinks that they can come, re-dig up a road that we had just paved, do it half-ass, excuse my language, and then think that we should pay to do it again? No. So what we're saying to these folks is, no, you're not doing that again. So these two positions and us focusing on this is saying that we're not playing with you. You're not going to do that, and if you're going to do it, you're going to pay us for it, or you're going to work with us so you can do a one-dig policy where if you want to run wires, you want to do that, you're going to do it when we're doing the construction that's there. So work with us collaboratively. They wouldn't dare do that anywhere else. They think they can do that here, and that's the same message that we want to send to folks that want to own stuff in our city, that want to do stuff in our city. We want the mayor and council to say, yeah, fine, we want you. We want to work with you. We want to work collaboratively. But you're not, the days of you being able to think you can do whatever you want, it's not going to happen, and we're going to push back. Now, it's costing us some money, right? Because we're getting sued for it. I was on Parks and Public Works when we passed that policy, but we did it for that reason. So I think in the long run, it's worth the investment, but we have to be clear to folks that they're just not going to come in here and dig. You heard all the number of permits that we have on a regular basis. That if you're going to do it, we're going to do it collaboratively, we're going to do it right, but if not, you're paying for it. Not city taxpayers, you're going to pay for it. And that's the message that we want to try to send.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Pio?
Thank you. I don't see any funding in here or objective for any updating of our centers. I know that structurally and engineer-wise, Edgerton, our center needs something. So do we have any ambition for updating our centers in the near future?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think you will find a lot of those initiatives in our CIP. So as we make modifications and operational changes in all of our city facilities, regardless of who is in them, we work with those different departments to put together those costs and put them in the CIP. So for example, for Edgerton, we do have funding for the design at this time. We're in that design right now. and we'll be coming back for construction funding at a later date.
And just as a reminder, we have our CIP budget hearing on May 31. So there'll be plenty of time to ask questions about that as well. Thank you.
Correct.
Any additional questions on A&E 715 to 721?
So since we're talking about our centers, and it may well already be in the CIP, I'm just going to put it out there. What is the plan for the replacement of the Avenue DR Center? It is a well-utilized location, but quite frankly, in its current configuration, it doesn't come close to meeting the needs of the community that it serves. But it is a fabulous space and footprint that we could probably develop something really good over there. So I'm hoping that if you don't already have a plan for the replacement, redevelopment of it, something along the lines of what we've done with Gantt Center, which was a wonderful piece of work, that be put into the planning process. Thank you.
So noted, Councilmember, for sure. I don't know if there's, we can note that. Yes. Yep. Got it noted.
Okay, great. We're going to move on to operations, 722 all the way through 736. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I'd like to start with 723, where it says here, expand the use of automatic vehicle locator technology. And I'd like to ask, what is your focus? Is that citywide, or is that including law enforcement, fire, and fire department as well?
Go ahead, Karen.
So this technology in this program is the beginning in solid waste collection. So we've done some pilot programming to see if we can have some technology that can talk to, if we have a service skip or a concern of some sort, a picture gets taken and it goes right to the technology of 311. So when a customer calls in, they can get real-time information. So we're at the very basic of this, just beginning to put technology in the refuse trucks.
So to follow up with that, thank you very much, by the way. So we don't have automatic vehicle locators in those other departments at all? This is the only department we have it in?
We do have automatic vehicle locators in all the vehicles. This technology piece is going to add to the current AVL program that we have.
Oh, okay. Okay. So just so I'm clear, this is just expanding. Can you explain a little bit more what the technology actually does?
So what the technology does is it routes, we take our routes and put it into this program. So as we do our routes and as we go through each service level, it gets noted while we're there. So we can do a lot of data collection to see, did we miss a street? Is there a route that has a problem? And it's all real time. So we're at the just getting ready to put an RFP out for this. But the idea is that it works with our, what we call GeoTab, that's our product, so we can know what happened at each location.
Thank you.
Sure.
Additional questions on operations?
I have a question.
Councilmember Lupien?
Actually, I'm not sure if it's on operations.
Operations, we're going to go all the way from 722 to 736.
This one's about snow and ice control.
Yeah, go ahead. That's here.
Okay. So snow and ice control are things we don't like to think about this time of year, but we all know how important it is to our city. Are we making any investments to up our game in sidewalks, in particular, given the impassable sidewalks that we've had this past year and how they affect the disabled community?
Great question, Karen.
Yep. So yes, we are making investments, and we have done a variety of things. We always do a debrief after a winter. This winter was challenging, not the whole winter, but we did have that time from the 17th of January right through to February 14th, where we had the 2 snowstorms and no thaw. So there's a lot of reasons. Our sidewalk plowing certainly goes on. We had 10 runs. We have some problems when we don't get cooperation from citizens also. So a lot of snow gets put in the sidewalk, And then with no thaw, it's difficult for us to get through. And people, it's hard to understand, but if one person blocks a sidewalk from their driveway, puts a car in there, it's several houses that are affected. We have to come off that route and go back on, and it takes a couple of houses to do that. And with no thaw, those became challenging issues. So we did take on, last year, we took on our snow plowing with city forces. We met with the city school district. We found the most pedestrian walked schools, and we put our routes for our city employees to do those routes and be able to do some continuous improvement. So get through the initial storm and then continue to go on those routes to improve them.
That's really great. Could we also include, if not already, some of the high traffic areas that are really dangerous, like Lake Ave? Having people walking in the street there, especially at night, is really dangerous, and parts of Goodman where, you know, if they're waiting for the bus, they're in traffic.
Absolutely.
Great.
And I know one of the things we did also this year was we were very proactive in terms of responding to calls when people would call in through 311 or the mayor's office to try to get to those areas that may not, where residents may have not done their part and plowed folks. Because the walking in the street is extremely, extremely, extremely dangerous. And then the other thing we also tried to do, and I even tried to demonstrate it, was to do more education, public service announcements of why it was important for people to get out and shovel that. If you talk to like some of the other cities, Cleveland, for example, is a city I talk to regularly. We're one of the few cities in the country that actually shovel when we get to
4 inches.
4 inches. You know, we actually have our folks come out and do that once it's done that, and you all are funding that again this year, which is unique to Rochester that we actually do that. But we have to make sure we do a better job of educating the public on their responsibility with the area that's just outside of theirs. And then when they don't do it, how do we still say, hey, we got to do it because it's a safety issue, particularly for our disabled folks that are trying to move about in the snow. But the walking in the street is something that worries me all the time because you know, it's dangerous, and it's only a matter of time before someone gets hit by a bus or a car, and they end up losing their lives as a result of that. So we will continue to do the 4-inch thing, and then also use education, and then where there is availability, these guys will come out and do what they can to make sure that we take care of those areas that were overlooked by the business owner or the residents that live in that area.
Yeah, thank you.
Pardon me, I would just add to that. I agree that we need to figure out the best way to work with individual homeowners on some of this stuff, or renters. But I think there's a bigger issue sometimes when it's huge, giant apartment buildings that take up multiple city blocks. Karen knows I've had this conversation about Van Auker or Dobson Apartments over on Ford Street. I mean, if you have an entire multiple city blocks and you're a big property management company and you're not fulfilling your obligation by keeping those sidewalks cleared, we may not be able to always use the carrot and sometimes need to use the stick. And I really hope that we are willing and frankly eager to do so sometimes.
You know, I love pulling out the stick. I hate to have to pull out the stick, but we did this, for example, with garbage. And Karen probably remembers this. There was a building, I won't say where, they had garbage strewn all over the place. We went and we took it and we said, look, we're doing it this time, but next time you're supposed to have waste management on one of these other properties. Next time you're getting fined, or we're going to charge you to do that. And I think that we need to send that, again, we need to send that same message to those big apartment buildings. They can afford it. And they wouldn't do that if it was in another town. They wouldn't do that in Pittsburgh. But see, people think they can do whatever they want in Rochester, and I think council, the mayor's office, we just have to be willing to take the heat when they say, you know, you cleaned it up and you charged us. Yeah, we did, because we got old folks trying to cross the street and they're walking they're walking in the middle of the street, and we're not going to tolerate that. So I'm glad to hear you say that, council member, because we want to be cooperative, we want to be friendly, but you are right. There will be times when we need to use those sticks, and I've said this to our zoning department, to the commissioner of NBD. I'll say this in DES. When necessary, we need to use those sticks, particularly when it's affecting our constituents.
Amen. Additional questions? I think everyone's hand down there, so why don't we go from Councilmember Smith down to Councilmember Martin. I'm starting at the end, Mike. It's just about sequence.
Mike's like, I'm on the committee.
Ladies first, Mike, relax. On 723, Objective 1, where you talk about expanding the residential food waste program, can you talk a little bit about your outreach campaign and what community engagement will look like?
So certainly what we want to see out of this is zero waste. We're going for zero waste. So this is actually our next step for recycling. You know, we started with regular recycling, we went to single stream, we went to 96-gallon containers, wheeled containers, and now we're going to food waste management to take what we can out of the food waste, out of the waste stream, sorry. So we have a variety of ways that we're educating, and that's why we started with a pilot, so we could work with the public and see what works and what doesn't. Ann can probably reach out. You know, we've done surveys, we've done several outreaches, social media. Ann, if you want to jump into this.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, so we do continuous outreach. We do have a food waste reduction program that we do quite a bit of education and outreach, both on social media, as Karen mentioned. We have a web page, but we also have a presence at various locations, such as the public market and at the compost drop-off locations, where we have information that we're handing out regarding reducing food waste. We are also working with some of the rec center folks on developing a program for children to take home to their families to understand how to best reduce food waste in their own homes.
And it's working great because there's a big waiting list, as we said.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pio?
Thanks. Sorry, I wanted to stay on that sidewalk conversation real quick. Because I have a lot of constituents who ask me about salting the sidewalks, which I'm sure there's a huge increase in funding that would be required to that. Have we done an analysis on that so that we can say, look, if we're looking to possibly add salting to sidewalks, this is how much it would increase your taxes? Have we done an analysis on that?
Yeah.
So I believe we have done an analysis, and I'd have to give you those numbers, but it's more than just the money. The condition of the sidewalks, we want to make sure that we're not deteriorating the sidewalks more than they are. So we have a huge hazardous sidewalk component through A&E, and we want to make sure that we're not damaging our sidewalks ourselves. So I can get you the numbers for what that would cost to treat sidewalks.
Yeah, but yeah,
it'll be a big number.
You know, as you probably know, salt is horrible on the you can just look at the walkway to my house from all the salt that I put down there. So we'd have to balance the cost that we may pay later on down the line for hazardous sidewalk repair, which we fund as a city, with the balance of salting the sidewalks. But yeah, it's we'd have to look at that, strike that balance.
Yeah. Well, Commissioner Perrin already promised me heated sidewalks, so we might be fine with that.
Yeah, well, that'd be real nice.
Councilmember Patterson?
Okay, a couple of things. So back to sidewalks, especially sidewalks on main thoroughfares. We've absolutely got to do a better job of plowing them than we're doing. From my experience from watching our plows, not our plows, our contracted plows go through, they try hard, but they find the subject difficult. They just don't do a good job. The city crews, on the other hand, when I've seen our city equipment out there and our city operators working, our city staff, they do a good job. You know, the challenge really is about not just folks walking in the street, but our disabled community in wheelchairs. You know, when it snows, they're stuck in the right of way, and it's scary enough out there with a car, much less your wheelchair that's slipping and sliding and all kind of mess and prone to getting hit. And I'm quite fearful that at some point in time, we're going to have that tragedy occur. So it's my hope that we could start looking at getting that contractor to transition from the equipment that he currently has, or finding somebody else to take their place, but also possibly looking at expanding the scope of what the city does itself, specifically and particularly with our main thoroughfares, especially those thoroughfares that support transit lines. So that's something I would like you guys to consider. And towards that end, 734, I direct your attention to that 5 of the original 15 sidewalk snow plowing routes that were to be shifted to city crews in 2021 will need to be rebid. And, you know, it seems as though we're going in the wrong direction there. I get it that finding labor is difficult at this point in time. But if we've got to compete for employees, let us be serious about competing. And so I would hope y'all would give that some consideration and some thought also.
You said that's 730?
7-34, program change. Top of the page, only thing on the page.
Yep, got it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to get me riled up, and the commissioner's not here, but he knows sidewalks and litter and graffiti. Those are 3 things that get me going, so I feel you on those points.
Well, I apologize to you for bringing up graffiti. So, but since you brought it up, I'm going to ask the question. So did we lay everybody off on the graffiti team? Because, you know, 3 years ago, as quick as it went up, it got knocked down, and then all of a sudden, it's like everywhere you go, here it is, and there it stays. So what happened?
No, we now have a robust, and I'll let Karen weigh in on this, graffiti. Okay. It seems like a lot of the graffiti that happened, it's like the artist knew that during the wintertime, it's hard for us to be able to take it down, and that's where you really saw an increase of it going up. We can't take it down. You know, it's hard to take it off during the winter because the chemicals just don't work, as you know. So we are on that. If anybody sees graffiti, tell me where you see it. We want to make sure we get it down. We're not talking about the beautiful murals that we have around our city, right, but just the graffiti. I think that we have a lot of opportunity to continuously improve there. But my message has been clear. When it goes up, I want it down like the next day. Commissioner Perrin has a chart that he showed me that has where the graffiti is and which way we need to go to get it down. One of the things I would love to see, and I said to someone, is I think that we may need to invest in 2 more defacer erasers, 1 for each quadrant, because right now I think we only have 2.
We have 2.
We have 2. I want to see that go up to 4. I'm hoping that we can find money in the existing budget to get up to that 4, because we want to get that down. There's one guy in particular, I won't say his name because I don't want to give him any props. I think we're locked in a battle with him, because it seems like whenever we put it, we take it down, he goes back and tries to find a way to put it back up. But graffiti, we want down, and one of the things we also want to try to do with some of these people who are tagging in graffiti, we want them to work with Sean Dunwoody, we want them to work with some of our great artists that are doing great murals all around the city. We got murals at the skate park, we got murals all over the place. We want them to come in and work with all the graffiti artists the mural artists that we have, and they can graffiti all they want, but they can do it in a way that's legal, right, and beautiful on behalf of the city. So I just don't think they realize the amount of effort and work that it takes for us to go and try to do these things, but I am on it. I keep notes of every time I see graffiti and get it over to our DES crew. I would urge you all to do the same thing. The other thing is we can't take it down if we don't see it, so if you see it, let it happen. Now, the other point I'll make on this graffiti, and see you got me started, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, is the state. We need them to clean up the graffiti on the expressway. Yes. Because I am not putting DES crews out there. One of the things we're looking at is that we contract with someone to go clean up, and then can we send the state the bill? But we are working with Tammy Mayberry, Chief of Staff, is trying to work with the state, as is DES, because we need them to clean up the graffiti that's on the expressway, because that's where you've seen a lot of it. We only can get to the graffiti that's in within city limits, but stuff on the state thoroughfare, we need them to get that cleaned up, because they have to shut down the expressway, get it cleaned up, and do all those things. They told us, oh, your DES folks can do that, but I'm not putting our workers on that in danger. I'm not doing that. Either we'll pay for it and charge them, or they need to do it. But they need to do that for sure. So that's I can go on and on about graffiti, but I know you got a lot of other pages.
Yeah, wait a minute. Wait. I'm still here. Wait a minute. So, all right. So we were talking about composting. I'm going to make a request regarding cardboard. So look, what we were talking about, sales tax revenue, and why is it up? It's up because everybody in my house orders from Amazon, and we got boxes all over the place. We're not even coming close with the recycling bin with the cardboard. Is it possible, since you guys have the staffing to do the little spot composting thing, that we could get a set date, location on a regular basis for cardboard drop-offs for City of Rochester residents? I'm sure there are plenty of folks out there that would fill up their trunk and throw it in if they had somewhere to put it where nobody would yell at them or throw rocks at them. Can we look into a cardboard drop-off location so we can do that? Because if we can pick up everybody's, if you can bring your kitchen waste here, I should be able to bring all this cardboard I got on the porch to you and drop that off too.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Okay. And then I got questions on water, but we ain't there yet.
Yeah, we're going to close up with operations. Councilmember Martin, President Melendez, and then and then Councilmember Harrison will close in operations.
On page 723, continuing to partner with Department of Corrections and Community Supervision for snow removal. I'm curious about the cost associated with that. How much are people who are transitioning back into our community paid for this work, and what does the program look like to help transition them into full-time employment, whether in the city or somewhere else in the community?
So we partner with New York State Docs with this agreement, and we work with CEO for locations to get folks to be able to get back into the workforce. And we do that year round now. It's for litter. It's also for some of the issues you talked about with sidewalks. They do handicap ramps for us. They do fire hydrants within their district. They do high rises, bus stops, that sort of thing.
Great question, Councilmember Martin. And to my other point, this also gives us, it's like, who would have thought that DES is involved with violence? See, people wouldn't think that, but this is violence prevention, because not only does it give them something, they love it because they want to get out, right? They want to get out, get fresh air, and do these things, and they're doing a service. They're literally helping someone who might be handicapped be able to pass over, so they're involved with that. They get a little bit of money in their pocket by partnering with CEO, but the other piece of it and why it's important and why I hope that we can expand this, we're looking at even expanding this more, is then they can be a part of our rejob program. And we actually have, I think Councilmember Melendez was at the last graduation that we had. We actually had folks who had transitioned from incarceration, and now some of them are either working at the City of Rochester or with some of our partners that work in this environmental services space. So it's a great opportunity, and I hope that we can expand it even more. It's something that Victor wants to expand from a violence prevention services standpoint. So even though his department doesn't do that, by him going in and visiting the jails on a regular basis, we're hoping to connect them through CEO, through DES, to get even more people to be able to do that. The other thing we're encouraging is RTS. We're encouraging RTS to be able to do that, and maybe they will bill us, because the other challenge is the bus areas. There's nowhere sometimes for people to sit, nowhere to stand, and if you notice in the wintertime, a lot of people catching the bus, they're standing out in the street. So how can we use our folks who may be getting ready to get out from being incarceration to also use them to help do that? So that's a partnership that we also hope to expand on next year as well.
Yeah, it's a really great program. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Melendez?
Yes, I want to echo my colleagues on the snow and ice removal. I think, I won't beat a dead horse on that one, but I want to talk about leaf collection.
Uh-oh, that's my other one.
So, generally speaking, I know that we do an excellent job in the city of getting the leaves that are on the curb, once they're on the curb, but I just want to highlight that that first week is particularly challenging, especially those neighborhoods that are on the leaf collection for the first run, because most of the leaves haven't fallen. And then by the time we get to the end, usually it's snowing. So I don't know if there's anything we could do to evaluate that and look at that process. I don't know if starting a little bit later helps at all. I don't know if we can do anything from a manpower perspective differently, but I just wondered if there's any thoughts on that while we go through this process.
Karen, maybe you can touch on what you did, I think it was this year or before, where they did it the regular schedule, but then, Rochester's weather is kind of schizophrenic. When it changed and warmed, then they went back out and did that again. So maybe you can touch on the dual leaf collection
Exactly.
process.
So, that's our 30-day storm. That's what I call it.
Right.
So, I have to get all the leaves in time for the snow to fall, and that's, certainly anybody's guess. So we did move it up a week. We were starting in the last week of October. We have moved it up to the first week in November. 30 days. We also changed our routing. Used to be 4 weeks. It is now 3. We expanded the routes. So we do have to go to that week 1, even though we know that there's not all the leaves down, but we'll get what we can get. But week 1 is actually, even though it's aggravating at the time, they have the best chance for that second time through. Because
That's good to know.
the snow will fall. So as annoying as it is in the beginning, we hope to be back, and we will continue, even after the snow flies, we come back, weather permitting, and get everything we can get.
Okay, a second follow-up, just thinking about the defacer eraser model, and I'm not sure that this should be our responsibility, but I'm going to float it out there anyway. Syringe litter. I think we've done a lot to encourage other partners, others in the health community, nonprofit community, to take on this challenge. Whether it's us or someone else, I'm just encouraging that we create some type of model similar to defacer eraser that physically goes out with trucks or whatever to the community and responds to the community. It may take some of our nonprofit partners to do it, but I think administration and council can jointly work together to figure that out. I just want to put it out there.
Very much interested in that, and as you know, we are getting a significant amount of dollars on our opioid settlements. Did we get our first check yet, Mr. B? Do you know? Where's my money? Opioid.
Unfortunately, no. I'm sure it's in the mail.
It's in the mail. But that is an opportunity for us to be able to do that. And I talked about specifically talking to the district council members. Where many of you are closest to this with your residents, particularly in the Northeast, Northwest, where we've seen a lot of this. Let me give you another topic to do, but yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, there as it relates to the syringe issue, and you were with me when I had firsthand experience, unfortunately, with syringe issues.
Right, thank you.
Councilmember Harris, last question for operations.
Thank you. Along the lines of trash, I'd like to say this is more of a comment than a question. This year's Clean Sweep was great. There was a lot of participation from the 19th Ward. Actually, I'll follow up with a question. I've noticed there was, we worked with DES and Neighborhood Service Center in the 19th Ward to kind of put more trash bins along Thurston Road, Thurston Chili area, because you've seen the garbage just completely come back right after Clean Sweep. I know once that's done, we've seen an improvement. Not a great improvement, but we've seen some. They get filled up pretty quickly. And I was wondering if that model can be pushed across the city if it hasn't already been done.
Yes, and yes, it has. So we know where we call them our hot spots are, and we add litter containers strategically on arterial streets everywhere we can, wherever we can get that, because we also work with, CEO and our internal teams to get to all those hot spots. So we're very aware. One issue that we do have with litter baskets with businesses, and I know you know what I'm going to say. They tend to use our pedestrian litter basket for their garbage.
Yeah.
What can we do to get them to contract like they're supposed to? How do we enforce that?
So we do that. We go there, we actually rip open bags, find out where it's coming from, and approach them with our code folks.
My final follow-up is, is there a marketing plan or like an outreach plan to kind of help people, change their behavior, throw their litter in the garbage bins? I find that grown people my age will stop at the light, see the garbage can there, and just throw it out the window.
Another one of my soapboxes, that I won't get on it because I know you got to move through the rest of the thing. But we actually have an internal. We called it blight, but my team told me I need to be more positive, so we're calling it